vibe. Come let we lime, come let we vibe. Lime vibe. Oh, lime vibe.
Go out to this computer. So welcome again to our first, well, not welcome again, but welcome to our first recording of the Lime Vibe podcast. This is your host, Yuri Kemp, and I'm sitting here with our first ever guest, Miss Pamela Haynes from the United Kingdom. Say hello, Pamela.
Hi, Yuri. How are you?
All is well, Pamela. Thank you for joining me today, man.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, Pamela is from the UK by way of Barbados. So tell us, Pamela, tell us a bit about yourself. Let's start off right from there.
Okay, I was born and raised in London, in East London particularly. I went to local schools and got my first job locally in Stratford, working for Her Majesty's Crown Prosecution Service. I was there for 5 years, so got quite a lot of experience working at the magistrates' courts in North East London and also at the Crown Court. I had a change of career from the CPS to the probation service, and I was there until I retired in 2018. I am one of 5 siblings. I'm the eldest and the first in the family to write a book. So it's quite something big for our family, and my books are
Oh,
doing amazingly well.
oh, you're the first author in your family. That's. How does that make you feel?
Well, for me personally, it's about trying to get through my life goals of being an author. I'm an avid reader,
Mm.
always in awe of authors. So to be able to do that for myself has been quite a major achievement. It feels good.
Oh, how do your family feel about you, your siblings?
They're very, very proud
Mm.
of my achievements, and they're also involved in the process as well. So, the sister after me is one of my reviewers. I have a
Mm-hmm.
small group of people who I share each chapter that I write, I share with them, and they give me feedback in real time.
Mm.
My other sister is my PR manager, so she arranges all my book launches and so on. My children are involved as well. Basically, the whole family is involved. Whenever I get invited to do something or to go somewhere, I try and bring a family member with me or a close friend with me so they can share the experience of either being in the studio or being on the radio. Whatever it is that I'm doing, I try to include other people on the journey as well.
So this is a family affair.
Absolutely. And when I finally have my book launch for Loving the Sisters and Loving the Children, it's going
Mhm.
to be called A Family Affair because
Wow.
I've got, one of my sons is an artist as well. So he
Mhm.
does spoken word and so on.
Mhm.
Another one said he would do security for me. And my youngest son said that he will introduce me at my book launch. So yes, definitely a family affair. My husband will also, he's a photographer, he will take all the pictures and so on. So yeah, I like to get the whole family involved.
So it's a family of artists. So before we get into the book, let's talk a bit more about your background. So
Yes.
tell me, how is it living in the United Kingdom as a Black woman from the Caribbean? Well, descended from the Caribbean. How's your experience being in the United Kingdom?
Yes, I mean, we're described as first generation in terms of
Mm.
being born in the UK. So my parents hail from Barbados. My
Mhm.
dad is from Bridgetown, and my mum lives in the countryside. So she is from St. John.
Mhm.
So they met here. They met here in the UK. And I suppose it's the first of everything. I'm the first child, the first to go to primary school and experience what the educational system is like here.
Mhm.
I'm the first to go to secondary school, first to experience what discrimination and
Ah.
racism looks like when that raises its head.
Mhm.
So I seem to be the first to do, to do most things and to experience most things.
Mm.
I would say in the main, it has been a positive experience of growing up in the UK.
Mhm.
I could go to the fridge, there was always food there.
Mhm.
There was always, I've never known a time when the electricity or the gas was cut off, in
Ah.
terms of opportunities that
Yes.
came my way to do well. My parents did set up the circumstances and gave me those opportunities to try everything that I wanted to try. So
Mhm.
For example, I had ballet lessons, piano lessons,
Mhm.
you name it, Saturday school, went to Sunday school. I had opportunities to experience
Yes,
everything and to choose
yes,
for myself. So I'm very grateful that my parents worked hard. One did
yes.
work days, one did night work to make sure that we
Mhm.
never went without. So I'm
Mhm.
very grateful for that.
And you're able to transfer that over to your kids and your family.
Oh,
That
absolutely. I mean,
those
one of the
values.
most fundamental things that my parents did was to make sure we saw Barbados as children.
Yes,
And,
yes,
you get an idea of what you think the Caribbean is like.
yes.
And I was really grateful for the opportunity to see it for myself at 12 years old.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I knew that we had all the modern technology that we have in the UK.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
got to see Carnival and crop over,
Mhm.
with my own eyes. I
Yes.
knew that whilst the Caribbean is poor or can have pockets of poverty, what I
Mhm.
did know is that we also had wonderful, houses,
Mhm.
properties, and the experience of seeing Black people in positions of power,
Yes.
like they're pilots, air hostess, immigration officers. It
Mhm.
was such an experience that opened my mind to actually people do live differently and have nice lifestyles in the Caribbean as well.
Yes.
So
Yes. So it's
I'm
not the
glad that
plantation. It's not the plantation as it used to be anymore. Things
no,
develop a
not
lot.
shanty towns, not people with flies buzzing about them, nothing like that. And I wanted my children to see that. So when they were
Yes.
quite young, I think one was 3 years old, the other was 4. We
Mhm.
went to Barbados and spent 5 weeks there. And I
Mhm.
do remember taking them to the beach for the first time, 10 minutes from where my parents live.
Mhm.
And they said to them, one said to me, Mummy, I didn't know all of this was here. Why didn't you say?
Ah.
So, we had secluded beaches to ourselves. They
Yes.
had an absolutely amazing time. And it's interesting, my young son, my youngest, he now complains, oh, all we ever do is go to Barbados, Barbados, Barbados. We don't go anywhere else. And I think to
Mm.
myself, you're so blessed to be able to have your own passport and
Yes.
to
Yes.
travel. And I bet if you ask children in your class, how many of them have had the opportunity to travel abroad, and you'd be surprised by the number of the people that don't. They don't,
Mm.
their children don't have passports. They don't have those kind of experiences. So I'm
Yes.
glad that I
Yes.
was able to share that a bit of my Caribbean culture with them.
Yes, yes, yes. That's such a good experience. And just to say something, the Caribbean beaches are not like Brighton Beach or like the Thames River. It's clean and pristine. You would walk on clean white sand. So I know your kids must have been freaked out when they saw the clean white sand in Barbados, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm.
Flawless and secluded as well. So it wasn't
Mm.
crowded with not a tourist or a local person in sight. That
Mm.
particular afternoon, we had the whole beach to ourselves. And I said to them, if you want to go in, because they didn't have their costumes with them,
Mm.
if you want to go in, just take off your clothes and go in. So it
Mm.
was a remarkable experience for them.
Yes, yes. Did you partake in any of the island fruits like sea grapes and cocoa plums?
Cocoa Pods, yes, they asked me recently to send in a chapter of my books to
Mhm.
them so
Mhm.
that my chapter can appear on their podcast. So that's something that I'm trying to get through with this year.
Okay, okay. So let's jump right into the book then. So tell me a bit about the book, Pamela. It's Loving the Brothers is the first one, right? So tell me how does that start? How does that play into your whole background? How did you get to writing the book Loving the Brothers?
Yeah, it's here. I thought I would
Hmm.
show off my cover.
Hmm.
It's originally an oil painting, a bespoke oil painting.
Hmm.
My three characters are on the front of the cover.
Hmm.
Um, in 2016, I was fast approaching a milestone birthday, and I
Hmm.
wanted to acknowledge it in some way. I had 3 things on my bucket list, as they say, that I wanted to get
Hmm.
through with.
Hmm.
Go on a cruise, do my master's,
Hmm.
or write a book. And
Hmm.
as you know, all 3 of those things are quite expensive
Yes.
to do,
Hmm.
especially studying for your master's, unless you
Yes.
get
Yes.
sponsorship, trying to do it by yourself can be quite difficult. But also I felt that with doing the 9 to 5 job and all the other things that I'm involved in, didn't really feel as though I had the headspace to do something academically. So I dropped that one off. But I happened to be a Friends Plus One at an event when I sat on a table with a really successful author, and I was in awe of her. She had a stack of her books called Geraldine's Pearl on the table. And I said to her what I always say, one day I'm going to write a book. And she said, keep in touch with me. I'm moving into publishing and let's work together and see if we can get that done.
Good.
And she drove me, encouraged me, mentored me until Loving the Brothers came into being. So the book, in a sense, is about 3 women who meet the Morgan brothers. Here they are again. Marcus, Manly, and Junior. And life isn't quite what it seems when they get with the brothers. And the women plot to leave the brothers on the same day. So that's essentially what the book is about.
So
and it shows you, how we live in London. It shows you the kind of lifestyles we have, the places that we go to, the activities that we do. There's loads to do in London.
But the book is set in Jamaica, isn't it?
It's part set in London, and then something happens in the book, which means they have to go to Jamaica. So they go to Negril in Jamaica. Again, I'm pulling in my experiences of traveling to Jamaica. I've been to Montego Bay, and I've also stayed in Ocherius as well on 2 occasions. And I wanted to pull in what it's like for someone who travels to the Caribbean for the first time, like how women cope with the heat, the mosquito bite, the places where they go to, going up Dun River Falls for the first time. I do remember thinking, I must be the first, I will be the first person to fall down Dun River Falls and have to be airlifted out of there. Thankfully, that didn't happen. But I'm able to pull in.
You're doing better than me. You're doing a lot better than I am, because I never went to Jamaica, actually. I would like to go. I visited Barbados, but I would like to go to Jamaica and Trinidad for sure.
I've been fortunate to be able to travel the Caribbean quite a bit. Remember I was saying about my bucket list of doing the going on a cruise? And I was fortunate to go on a cruise which took me to Grenada, Antigua, St. Martin, BVI, Grenada. So I was very fortunate to visit those places. And obviously, as a person with Barbadian citizenship, I've been going backwards and forwards to Barbados most of my young adult life, and went twice in 2020. So yes, I can say that I know Barbados in particular very, very well.
That's something very interesting. You say you still have Barbadian citizenship. I thought you had to give up one or the other. So how is it that you're...
No, unfortunately, the rules allow for you to have dual heritage. So I have a British passport and Barbadian citizenship. And now we are a republic. I want to get my Republican passport. So that's what I've been holding out for. So hopefully I'll be able to get my Barbadian passport and I can travel like a local, not all of those queues backing out of the door. I can travel as somebody coming home. So I'm looking forward to doing that.
So how does it make you feel with Barbados? Well, sorry to change the conversation a bit, but how does it make you feel that Barbados is now a republic?
I never thought that I would see that in my lifetime. It has been a desire, I suppose, of some Barbadian people, decades before I was born. I suppose the conversation started when Barbados became independent back in 1966. So it's a conversation that's been happening before I was born. And every government that comes in, whether they are a D or a B or whatever else, have always promised that they would be the government that would make Barbados become a republic. But it took a woman. It took Mia Motley to make that happen. It was an election promise that she fulfilled. And, I'm very pleased about finally severing the ties with the United Kingdom in that way.
And you're
And
there.
I like to think it hasn't impacted on tourism or anything
Mhm.
like that. Once people love Barbados,
Yes,
they come back and they are repeat visitors. So
yes, yes.
that's really good.
Yes, it's actually sparked a lot of conversations around the Caribbean as well, for other countries to now leave the United Kingdom and join their own republic. I think Jamaica, Andrew Holness, the Prime Minister, said it has to go to a vote, and he's actually seriously considering. Actually, when Barbados became a republic, a lot of people in Jamaica were ticked off. I mean, they were really upset because they thought they were supposed to be the first ones, right? But no, Mia Mothy is such a fantastic politician that she did it herself, and it took a woman. It took a woman. And I have to tip my hats to
Absolutely.
them.
Well,
Took a woman.
Barbados isn't the first. I think Barbados is the fifth or the sixth Caribbean
I mean, the
island.
first in this wave. And
But
I know
in this
because there was
wave,
Guyana, there
absolutely.
was Trinidad. It was Guyana first, then it was Trinidad. And I think, yeah, it was Guyana first and then Trinidad. Yep, those two. And now it's Barbados.
Absolutely. And and as I said, I really do hope that other Caribbean islands follow suit as well. But more
Yeah,
importantly, I hope there is some kind of unification of the Caribbean islands
yes.
as well, because I should be able to travel to the Bahamas as freely as
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Bahamas or Grenada or Antigua. There should be some more inter island travel, and I hope that the governments can work together to make that happen.
Yeah, yeah. The thing about that is that the airlift, they can't get the airlift, and they can't get a Caribbean airline for some strange reason. They have Caribbean Airlines and they have Liat out of Antigua, but it doesn't cover the entire region. It's very expensive, and they still have to travel in and out of Miami, Florida, to get to the other islands. Say, for example, when I went to Barbados the last time, I had to travel to South Florida and then back to Barbados, and then from Barbados back to South Florida, and then back to the Bahamas. And so there's not been an airline. They haven't been able to gather their minds around a proper airlift that could actually be reasonable and sustainable over the long term. That's the first thing. So I think I need to work on that. The second thing is that we had a union before. You would know we had a union back in the 60s where everyone was a part of the Caribbean. Where I think the headquarters was in Jamaica, and it was the Caribbean Union. I think it was. My memory serves me correctly. I think it's the Caribbean Union, yes. And they all broke off because everyone felt as if one was pulling more weight than the other one. So I think it was Jamaica that started to make noise the first time around, where we had the Caribbean Union, where they thought they were pulling most of the weight in the Caribbean, so they wanted to break up inside their own country. And then it went like that, and then it just disintegrated. So yeah, I think it can happen again if we really put our minds to it, if we really want to come together. But knowing people as they are, people don't want to come together. People in their own separate, parts of the land. I think we've been separated for so long, just like in Africa. All those different tribes in Africa. You can never have a single African union ever again, I think, because it's all separate countries. Zambia here, Ethiopia here, Nigeria here, Ghana there, and they have their own ethnic tribes. They think they own their own space. Even in Europe, people think that Europe just started off as it was. No, Europe was a bunch of there were different tribes. The Gaelics and the Scottish and with the Huns, and they were all separate people, and they decided to come together. Now as a European Union, they want to be decent now as a European Union, but they weren't always like that. And
No,
it
but not
wasn't.
necessarily. I mean,
Hmm?
as you know, the UK took part in a referendum not that
Yes.
long ago, and
Hmm.
when it comes
Brexit.
to economics and so on, we're out of it. We're out in
Yeah.
a loop. We're out there on
Yeah.
our own.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned, the only difference between you and I is where the boat stopped.
Yes.
So
Yes.
there's a lot more that unites us
Yes.
as a Caribbean people that
Yes.
divides us. And if we
Yes.
can get
Yes.
past that mindset,
Yes.
so
I think
even
so.
though I'm very much, for Barbados, I've
Hmm.
been to the Bahamas, I've traveled through the Caribbean.
Hmm.
We've all got similar ways of how we do similar things.
Yes.
There's
Yes.
about, I'm thinking about in terms of cuisine and so on,
Hmm.
very, very
Hmm.
similar throughout. You
Hmm.
might call it something else. I
Yeah.
might call it bakes, and you call it sugar dumplings or fried dumplings or
Yeah.
whatever. But basically, if it's got cornmeal and flour in it, it's the same thing.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yep.
I definitely think that there is more that unites us than
That
divides us.
divides
And,
us.
and, and
Yes.
back to the book, I based
Yes,
part of
please.
it in Jamaica. But
Yes.
I have characters who are from Barbados, who are from Guyana, who are from all over. And I suppose that's my attempt at saying that there is more of us that, that unites us than actually divides us. And,
Yes. Yes.
once upon a time when I was growing up in the 70s, if you saw another Black person on the road, you always held them, or you gave them the nod, or, or you had a conversation with them. It's
Yes.
about
Yes.
acknowledging each other, regardless of where we come from. We were saying, I see you. I see you, brother. I see you,
Yes. Yes.
sister.
Yes.
And it didn't really matter where you were from. Even
Yes.
if you were from the continent, from Africa, you still acknowledged each other because you saw each other. And I think that's the
Yes.
most important thing that we need to
Yes.
return to.
Yes. 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 That's good. You put it like putting it like that, Pamela. So a bit more about the book. You three Black men. Now, this isn't a Black man bashing book, is it? No.
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah,
Because
but
that's
it's
in
also
fashion.
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know. I tend not to subscribe to that. I'm
Yes.
outnumbered at home. I'm surrounded by men at home.
That's good.
That's definitely not my style. But it is
Mm,
about looking at what works,
mhm,
what healthy relationships look like,
mhm,
and also when things go wrong, what they don't look like, what they shouldn't look like.
mhm.
So it's about looking at it all. And
Yes.
very much we're about shoving things under the carpet because we don't want our men to be seen in a particular way.
Mhm,
But, out of the three men, there are three different men. And,
mm,
it's interesting that one of my characters, Marcus, for example, is the epitome of what we think a man should be.
mhm,
Yet I have had women contact me and say, well, when is he going to turn?
mhm.
He's too good to be true. And it's almost that we don't recognize good men when we see them.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'm about
Yes.
promoting balance as well
Yes.
in my books. So
Yes.
I definitely wouldn't call it a male bashing book. It's being
Good.
read by men as well as women.
Mm.
I've had men contact me and say that their wife has been stuck in this book for a few weeks, and they've turned around and they've equally become fans of the book as well.
Mhm,
So it's definitely not a male bashing book, and it's not just for Black people.
mhm.
Other people have been reading the book. The book is being read in Australia, New Zealand, all across Africa, Caribbean, and America. So it's not just for us, the
So how's the
loving
book going?
brothers.
So how's the
It's
book going
going
now?
it's going very, very well. I'm very, very pleased.
Mhm.
I got the second book. I got a publishing deal in January 2022
Oh, okay.
for three books.
Mhm,
So after hunting looking for a publisher and being on that treadmill of
mhm.
wanting to be traditionally published,
Yeah. Yeah.
finding an agent, and all of that rigmarole, and also sticking to my guns because
Mhm.
whilst publishers were interested, there were things about the book that they wanted to change.
Oh,
So they
wow.
didn't like, yeah, they didn't. So I was self-published in 2018.
Mhm,
Then I went to look for a traditional publishing deal,
mhm.
and they wanted me to change the cover.
Oh, wow.
They
Okay.
wanted me to change the name of the book. They didn't like the
Mm,
name of the book.
mm.
And they didn't like the fact that my three main protagonists were Black women.
Oh, wow.
And unfortunately for them, they were my three non-negotiables.
Yes.
So, 2020 then came and the murder of George Floyd.
Yes.
We had these publishers coming out saying, well, where are these Black authors? We don't see them. We
Mhm,
don't know
mhm,
where they are. We've been here all the
mm,
time.
mhm, mhm.
You just didn't see us. And then, as I said, they wanted me to change my book that basically I wouldn't recognize myself anymore. It wouldn't be
Yes.
my work anymore.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
I stuck to my guns, and fortunately, a publisher in South Carolina
Mhm,
found me, a small press,
mhm,
traditional press, and
mhm.
I'm one of their first fiction authors. So they gave me the opportunity to rewrite Love in the Brothers, which I did. I added 3 additional chapters. A lot of people said, well, why did you do that? Why did you change it? And I thought, well, you upgrade your phone every 2 years. Why can't I upgrade the book? So I did that. And both books, Love in the Brothers and Love in the Sisters, which I've got here. Here's a copy of Love in the Sisters.
Oh, we're going to get into that book next, right
Yeah,
next. But
yeah.
before we go there, tell me a bit about how that conversation went when they asked you to change the content of the book. How did that conversation go? How did that start?
Well, they said they didn't like the title Loving the Brothers because it spoke to a particular demographic. And that just proved to me that they didn't even crack the manuscript to have a look at it, because they would have realized that there are 3 actual brothers that I'm talking about. And I wasn't talking about a demographic. I was talking about how difficult it can be to love a brother, love a Black man, in the circumstances that we're in, So, I'm talking about mental health, I'm talking about stereotypes, I'm talking about how much pressure that Black men can be under. It can be difficult for them to be loved. But so they didn't get that. They didn't get the fact that 3 of my protagonists are Black women, but I wanted to demonstrate that domestic abuse can happen to any woman at any point of her career. And and we're not monolithic. We're not all the same. I wanted to prove that, 3 Black women are very different. So that's why I chose them. And they didn't like the cover because in terms of their marketing, their ideal, what they've got in their head, because remember, these publishers are running a business. They didn't think that people would be attracted to the cover. So they were the main 3 reasonings that was happening behind the scene. That said, Yuri, if a publisher came to me today and offered me a 6-figure sum for the book, they can change the cover if they want to. But until then, it's my book, and I wanted to tell our stories, and I wanted to tell it in my way. So that's important to me. And it's interesting that since 2020 and the George Floyd stuff, I've seen some beautiful covers on books now with our images on the front of them, and they're selling just as well as the other books.
Yes, that's good. That's good. So it isn't about Black power. It's just about a story about abuse from 3 brothers on 3 separate women. Yeah, that's good. That's good. It should be an awesome read, man. So this book dovetailed into a second book, right? This is a trilogy of books, isn't it?
That's right. I mean, it was always intended to be a trilogy of books. So I've had the working title Loving the Brothers for about 20 years since I decided I wanted to write.
A 20-year process, Pamela.
Oh, yeah. Again, it's not knowing where to start. It's not knowing how I'm going to be supported on this project. I've never done a writing course. I just knew that it was something that I wanted to do. And so yes, it has been 20 years in the making, but also I do believe that nothing happens before it's supposed to. And the process has given me the time to decide how I wanted to get those books out there and how I wanted to make an impact. And approaching a milestone birthday really helped with that, because I wanted to get the books out there. So yes, it's dovetailed into my second book, which is called Loving the Sisters. It's part 2 of the trilogy. And Loving the Sisters is about loyalty and sisterhood, and how we as Black women come together to support one another.
You have a copy of the book there? Show the copy of the book so people can see it.
Yeah, this is my hardcover. I absolutely love it. It's lush. It's out there. This is a watercolor. And
Who did the
as you can see, I've got the picture behind me. And I absolutely love it. So
who did the artwork?
Yeah. Who did it?
Yeah.
The artwork is by a company called Frank Images, and the watercolor was prepared by a man called Kevin Williams.
Okay.
And he just gets me. So my very first meeting with him, I told him a little bit about the plot, And he said, I got it. And that's what he came back with for both books. So he will be doing the cover for my third book, which I'm writing at the moment.
Amen. That's good. That's good. So what's the name of the third book now?
The third book is called Loving the Children.
Loving the Children. Okay.
And it looks at the impact of domestic abuse on children from before they're born right the way through to 18 years old.
Okay.
So, and it follows on from Loving the Brothers and Loving the Children. That's part 3.
Part 3. Okay. So Loving the Brothers was about domestic abuse on 3 women. So now 3 women are now in the second book, Loving the Sisters. What is that book really about? Is that about abuse of Black men by Black women? So
no. Although you're getting me thinking about perhaps a series.
Because it can happen, you know. It can happen.
Of course it does.
Yeah.
Of course it does. It goes both ways. And it happens in same-sex relationships as well. There's elder abuse, there's child abuse, there's there's a range of abuses that can happen because at the end of the day, it's about power and control in those relationships. So yes, it could be something that I could explore. But part 1 is how the women meet. Part 2 is about how they escape. And part 3 is the fallout from their decisions.
And that's the children getting all that soaking all that abuse. Wow.
Well, yeah,
so
I mean, research suggests that, children are very often in the same room or in the adjacent room when domestic abuse is occurring. So nobody escapes from this unscathed. So it's about exploring what happens. One of my characters is expecting a baby. And what we do know is that women who are experiencing abuse, who are also expecting, miscarry early. They give birth before they're supposed to. The babies are born who have low birth weights. They fail to reach their milestones like you should do, and all those kind of things. They suffer school anxiety, having to leave the parent while they go to school. So there's a range of things that happen from 0 to 18 that I suppose many people think that children aren't aware of because they're packed away to other family members or they're in the next room. But children over here, they pick up vibrations and they see these things, and it has its own impact on their own behavior as well.
And that's a serious conversation, Pamela. So I guess from your experience working as a counselor in the United Kingdom, that you've seen this time and time again. So tell me, this situation just keeps on repeating itself. What are some of the things that you've seen from your experience working in the United Kingdom as a grief counselor? Or as
probation service.
Probation service, yes.
Yeah, working in the probation service. So I was a senior probation officer, but I also spent time working on the domestic abuse program. So during that time, I must have heard hundreds and hundreds of stories from men who batter women. And what I've learned is that very often perpetrators of domestic abuse are also victims of domestic or survivors of domestic abuse as well. And very often have learned no other way of dealing with or how to manage relationships because they've not been on the receiving end of seeing good examples of what parenting looks like, what being in a relationship looks like. So yes, part of the course, the first 9 months was about unpicking all of those beliefs and false beliefs about what relationships look like. And the latter part of the course, which took another 9 months, was about equipping the men with other skills, with new skills of how to manage relationships. And the in terms of reoffending rates, 2 years down the line, the course was doing really well in terms of supporting men around those issues. But I also worked with survivors of domestic abuse, and I was then on the receiving end of hundreds of stories from women who were telling me their situations and some of the things that they had gone through. And that hasn't stopped. So in the last 4 years, men and women are still reaching out to me via social media to tell me their stories. They start off with talking about the books. So they start off
That's
with their
good.
favorite character. So, you know, a lot of women like Charmaine because she's a bit of a fighter. She doesn't take, you know, doesn't suffer fools gladly. And then they morph into telling me about their own experiences of domestic abuse. And I found that I quickly had to signpost men and women to support services in the UK for them to get support for their situation. So that's very important that people feel able to reach out to me, and I'm able to also pass them on to the correct associations to help them out.
So let me ask you a question, Pamela. So what are some of the successful things that you've seen that can be implemented in some of these domestic abuse situations that actually work, that could actually break the pattern from passing it on from child to child to child? What are some of the success things
I
you've seen?
think one of the most successful things, or one of the most helpful things that people can do, is to get some kind of counseling.
Mm,
You know, some kind of talking therapy, some kind of one-to-one, in terms of talking through what the issues might be. The thing is, there isn't just one pathway, because it's not one glove fits all. You know, people have to really
They have to
think
what?
about where to be unpicked, you know, to unpick things and to talk about things. So I will say the number one thing that you can do for yourself is to get some counseling in terms of talking through with a professional to
Yes.
talk through what those issues might be.
Yes, 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 yes. I can imagine all the horror stories you've seen over the past several years about who's been going through what. And people go to work and they put on the smile on their face and they're dealing with a lot of issues at home, man. It's just amazing how we've been able to mask, how society's been able to mask this over the last several years. But I do think it's as bad as it was, let's say, 30 years ago as it is now, or has it gotten worse, or has it gotten better?
I think it's just as bad, but different things trend at different times. So, for
Mm,
example, a lot of people stayed in marriages and much longer than they should have because they
mm,
did not have the financial stability to be able to do anything else. So,
mm,
if your husband worked and you were indoors,
mm,
run and go where, you know, especially
yeah,
in Caribbean, you know, a small
yeah,
island like Barbados, but you can't run to the next gap. The man will
yeah,
find you.
yeah, yeah.
So, you know, when you're financially dependent on somebody, it makes people stay in relationships
Yes,
much
yes,
longer
yes.
than they need to. If you have pressure from, you know, his family, her family, society to stay and honor your wedding vows through sickness and through health, through better, through through worse, then
Mm,
people, you know, honor those vows and they
yes,
stay a lot longer than they
yes,
should do.
yes, indeed,
So
indeed.
the fear of leaving could be actually worse than actually leaving itself. And
Wow.
if you're in a society where the police don't take you seriously, the court system don't take you seriously, your family are telling you to stay,
Mm,
maybe English isn't your first language.
mm,
And for a lot of women in the UK, they were promised, you know, British citizenship when they entered into marriage,
mm.
and 10 years down the line, nothing has been done. So
Wow.
you fear if you
So
go
they're
to the
hostage.
authorities, you're going to be deported.
Now you
So
said something
there are
interesting
lots of
yesterday.
things.
You said sorry to cut you off. You said something interesting yesterday. I want you to go back and repeat that again. The fear of leaving is different is greater than the fear of actually leaving itself.
Oh, absolutely. You know, some women are trapped in a cycle where the fear about trying to think about what an exit plan might look like
Oh
is
wow.
scary.
That's
Yeah, for
powerful.
some women, they don't have access to social media. They don't have a phone where they can look up resources
Mm,
on. They don't have friends because by that time they're so far down the road in terms of being trapped. They
mm,
have locked off family, friends. You know, some women have had to give up their jobs. Some
mm,
women don't even have their own bank accounts. So if they are
mm,
working, salaries are paid into the man's bank account. You know,
mm.
it wasn't that long ago in this country, in the United Kingdom, you could beat a woman with a stick no bigger than your thumb. It was
Wow.
legal. Yeah. You know, rape in marriage only became illegal recently, in recent times. So we're not going back to the dark ages. We're
Mm,
talking recent times. So
mm,
when you're trapped in those kind of things, you know, you've got
mm.
the church telling you that you need to honor your vows, you know, you need to
Yes.
stay in a marriage that you're unhappy in, you know,
Mm,
and we've seen, you know, women are killed in the
Mm.
UK. Two women are killed in the UK every week. So it's
Wow.
an epidemic in the
Wow.
United Kingdom, and I could imagine that that is duplicated around the world. We saw
Yes,
this
it is.
during pandemic times
Mhm.
when the number of reported domestic abuse cases rose globally.
Mhm.
And governments quickly had to put resources in places to fund more places at women's refuge and so on, because
Yes.
it was probably the first time some couples were around each other 24/7 for a
Yeah.
sustained period of time.
Yeah, and they couldn't take it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can see myself living with my wife for the rest of my life.
you
That's what they
can,
would
did you
say.
say?
They
Well,
can't. I can't see myself living with my wife for the rest of my life.
that's what I
That's
like to
sorry to make
hear.
a crass joke, but no, we're having a conversation right now in the Bahamas, where I am right now, Nassau, Bahamas. We're having a conversation right now about marital rape and should we legalize or make it illegal, make marital rape illegal. We're having that conversation right now, and of course, the church is on one side and everybody else is on the other side. And mind you, there are some hardcore conservative men who don't want marital rape to be illegal because they believe that you can't really rape your wife because your wife is supposed to be yours. And now to their point, I just want you to I just want you to hear this side of their argument. To their point is that they have laws in place already for abuse. And if your spouse is abusing you, there's laws in place right now that could say that you can leave your husband or have him bound over the peace or have him put out of your house. And anything after that would be assault or rape. So they say we already have laws in place that we don't need to go for marital rape. So what do you say to something like that?
Well, the thing is, these things are set in a very patriarchal and can be misogynistic as well.
Mm.
It's interesting that here in the UK, when a wealthy woman married a man,
Mm-hmm.
her title, her property, any land that she owned, money that she had automatically went to the husband.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some men out there who believe that women are their property,
Yes.
along with their houses, titles, wealth, and
Yes.
all that. And that's something that I'm quite strong that we need to move away
Yes.
from. And I
Yes. That's sickening.
suppose that's one thing I'm hoping that the government of Barbados looks at, because there are lots of old statutes that we've taken on board from colonial times, and that we need to banish from the statute books
Yes.
altogether.
Yes.
And this whole thing about marital rape, you can say no at any point, whether you're married to the man or not.
Yes.
And your body is your own body, and
Mm-hmm.
who you choose to share it with is very important.
Yes.
And very often when we're talking about marital rape, it could be there's a spectrum of consent,
Mm-hmm.
and very often no consent is sourced, and
Mm-hmm.
the woman is treated like property, like a piece of
Yes.
meat.
Like cattle. Yeah.
And we need to be in a modern society. We need to be looking at those issues.
Yes. Yes.
The
I
women
agree.
I certainly come across can describe some really brutal, being violated in the most brutal ways.
Mm-hmm.
Often shared with other people
Yes.
against their consent,
Yes.
and I don't see how anybody can say that that's okay.
Yes. 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 We live in kind of like a jaded kind of prism and a jaded kind of box, right? We don't see all these other things happening because it doesn't happen in our homes, right? But there are women out there that are suffering tremendously, because like you say, they're shared without their consent. They're passed around like they're just meat, and this is supposed to be your wife, the mother of your kids to some extent, and this is how you treat your wife. I mean, it's amazing. It's sad. It's sad, really. But I guess it's going to take another generation or so before it really starts to turn around worldwide, where we really start to take women serious. Because as we speak about our problems here in the West, you have people in Saudi Arabia and Iran women who really can't say anything, and that's a real shock. So I think we have a long way to go. Me personally, I think we shouldn't even be having the conversation about marital rape. That really should be something that we should have done away with a long while ago. But of course you can rape your wife. Of course there are laws in place right now that a woman right now can go to the court or go to the police and say, you know, I want my husband bound out of the peace. I want him away from me. I want to divorce him. I want to leave him. If he touches me again, this is assault. Yes, there are laws in the book. So we're talking about women who are trapped in relationships right now who don't have time to go through that process, who can be assaulted in their partnership. So yes. So, you know, Pamela, you know, how long ago did the United Kingdom put in place marital rape? Do you remember? Can you say?
Oh my gosh. I think it was in the 80s.
In the
I
80s.
can't come back to you with an absolute date, but I think it's around that time. So very recent history.
In the 80s. Wow. That was just then. That was yesterday. I was born
That's
in the
right.
70s.
Yeah.
So, you know, we just have a ways to go, Pamela. You know, but kudos to you guys for getting it done. I hope the Bahamas can get it done and all the other Caribbean countries can get it done as well. Because it's something that we need to take seriously, man, because we can't be abusing women like this every year in and year out, man. So
Yeah, but we can wring our hands and say, well, you know, it's going to take another generation. It's going to take, you know, but as far as I'm concerned, I can't change the world, but I can change the world around me.
yes.
So in terms of what can I do in my capacity is I use my books as a platform to open up other doors where we can start
Yes.
having these discussions, as difficult as they might be. So wherever I'm asked to go, I try and say yes. And there is a radio station in the UK. Oh, honestly, their audience, when they ring in, when their callers ring in, you're quaking in your boots. You better know your stuff. Yeah. But so far I have been 3 times. I always go because I know that it's worth it if one woman can hear my voice
yes.
and understand that this is not her fault. Yeah,
yes.
She didn't invite violence. And remember, there's other forms of domestic abuse as well, like emotional abuse, financial abuse, using the children to get to the woman, all those kind of things. As once she realizes that it's not her fault, she can start taking action about what she's going to do about it. So I've lectured at universities. I have been on television. I recently took part in a radio interview about Harry and Meghan, but again, looking at relationships. But I use the book as a platform to raise issues around domestic abuse because a lot of men and women don't know what it is. That's my contribution. That's what I can do. I can use the books as a platform to get into spaces that would otherwise be denied to me and so start having that dialogue. Yeah.
There you go, and you can preach the gospel. So we kind of stumbled away from the second book. So go into a bit more about the plot in the second book. We kind of understand what the first book is about, but tell me a bit more about the plot in the second book.
Oh, right. I mean, I don't want to give away too much,
I know,
but
tease us.
The key thing for me would be about the friendships of the women. So in Loving the Brothers, the characters meet up once a month at a shopping centre that we have in the UK called Westfield, and they in the main, it's about shopping and catching up and touching bases with each other. But in Loving the Sisters, it takes on a more objective-driven concept. So the women meet up to discuss their exit plans and how they're going to safely leave the situation that they're in. And I would say that Loving the Sisters is definitely about how the women support each other, how they plan their exit plans, and also looks at what happens on the day that they actually leave and the fallout from that as well. So, and as I said, Loving the Children is the fallout, what happens afterwards, because it doesn't end. It doesn't end there. Sometimes women go back to what they know. And as I said, I don't want too many spoiler alerts about what happens.
Save
next.
some, talk some, keep some. So the second book isn't as dark as the first book. That's what you're saying.
I would say that it is. I would say that it
Wow.
definitely is. There are some light-hearted moments because I don't want anybody to become depressed by reading reading the books. And there are laugh out loud moments. I didn't think that people would get my sense of humor. There are fiery characters in the book who offer light relief from such a dark subject. But I like to think that it's a hopeful book. You know, people have told me they have been traveling on the underground and they've missed their station because they were engrossed in the book. I've got some very nice reviews on Amazon and in other places where people say that they were gripped. You know, someone said, you know, fiction has never felt so real. And I really liked that particular review of the book because they were gripped from start to finish. You know, I've got friends who packed my books in their suitcase to take on holiday last summer. You know, because they wanted a beach read and they were engrossed. And I suppose that's what you want.
Yes, yes. So tell us where you can get the book from, Pamela.
Oh my. I think Amazon delivers, don't they, to the Bahamas and the Caribbean?
Worldwide. Yep.
Yeah, worldwide. Also, it delivers to Books A Million in the States, Target, Walmart, Barnes and Noble, which I'm particularly proud of because when the book was first self-published, I was told that Barnes and Noble don't take self-published books, but they took mine. So I'm really pleased about that.
God was with you.
So basically anywhere where any good books are sold. I recently did a deal with a company called BlackRock Books, which is based in Barbados, and they have agreed to stock the book. So, you know, anyone in Barbados can go to BlackRock Books, which is in BlackRock in Bats Point, Bats Rock. They can go and buy the order the books from there, and they have promised me that they will order the books in. So anywhere, I would say, where good books are sold. And if you can't buy the books, they ask your local bookshop to stock the book and to order it in for you. So there's nothing to stop them from doing that.
Yes.
So yeah, the books are doing really well.
That's good. So Pamela Haynes, prolific author from the United Kingdom by way of Barbados. So the books are, the first one, Loving the Brothers. The second one is Loving the Sisters. And the third one, to be published later, is Loving the Children. So Pamela, thank you so much for coming on here with us today on Line Vibe, the podcast for the Caribbean and Central American region. I'm your host, Yori Camp. So show us the books, Pamela. Very, very good. There you go. Pamela, thank you so much for coming on with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I wish you all the best.
I wish you all the best with the book. You too. I wish you all the best with the book, Pamela. Thank you so much. Here I am again, Yori Kemp from Line Vibe Podcast. Thank you so much. Goodbye. Thank you, Pamela. That's it.